Started recording.
So this is our podcast topic of today, colonialism's effect on health, and it's about India. It's a case study.
So in effect, you're talking about the British effect on Indians' health, what they did during the period in which they occupied India.
Yeah.
Okay. And this, you believe that this will be generally applicable to other colonial powers in other places too?
Yes.
Okay. So what do we see here?
So on the left, we see a picture of some Indians who are very impoverished due to the British rule and enforcing famines on India.
I thought famines were natural, not necessarily imposed by one government or the other. They just happen.
Well, if you control the food supply, then you control who's getting the food supply and who's not getting the food supply. So
Okay, so what you're saying is, in India, I know that there are floods and then there are droughts. Almost nearly every alternate year, there's one or the other. And during that time, what you're saying is that the British controlled the food supply and did not deliver food supply to a lot of Indians. And that's why you see this emaciated, poor Indians who probably look like they've not had food for a long time.
Exactly.
So, natural disaster aside, the British government during its rule of India did not provide the necessary infrastructure and food to the starving Indians.
yeah.
Okay, that's not. I mean, that's not disputable. That's indisputable. That's a fact that is recorded in history. Even in British documents, they did not regard Indians as equals or human beings or whatever, and so they treated them really poorly. Which means that if there was a drought and there was famine, they would not necessarily consider giving food to the Indians a priority at all. So okay, we've got that. Now what is we understand that. So what's next?
So next, I wanted you to talk a little bit about your struggles with diabetes and the effect it's had on you, and just like how you think the British might have affected that, or maybe even your diet might have affected that.
Okay, so human beings in general, when they are either hunter-gatherers or farmers, they tend to be able to want to predict where their next meal is coming from, their food supply, and so on. So if their food supply is stable and they know that they're going to get their next meal, they eat in a relatively healthy fashion. But if a human being does not know where his next meal is going to come from, then he generally
Eats a lot.
eats a lot.
Eats a lot, yeah.
And what happens when you eat a lot is it's unhealthy for you, right? You have to,
Also, me and Marquez were talking about this, but
In a family of like 6 or more, like you might eat more because your siblings might like get done with their food and they might be like, I need more food, and so they might eat your portion of the food too if they're able to. So
there's competition
Competition.
within the family, there's competition within the community, and all that adds to wanting to eat as much as you can, hoard as much as you can, and so on and so forth. What that does, essentially, if you eat a lot, then your body gets conditioned to that. And eating a lot in bursts like that, especially if you're feast and famine kind of cycle, then your body is going to deteriorate real fast. And as we know, it's not doesn't happen in a day, doesn't happen in a generation, but over a period of time, through multiple generations, the genes that are passed down get altered to combat situations of poverty and scarcity. So now, if the young man today, a young Indian today, if you look at him or her for that matter, and you find that they are eating a lot and they are getting fatter, it might not necessarily be purely due to their need for food or the hunger pangs. It could also be that those inbuilt genes and mental conditioning over a period of time has told them that they better eat a lot, because in the past we never knew where the next meal was coming from, and so on. So the key connection here is that the British, by withholding food to the Indians, caused starvation, and the eat a lot mentality. Eat anything that you can lay your hands on, eat a lot, no matter what it is, because we don't know if you get food tomorrow. If the British had been equitable and during famine did supply folks with food, adequate food, then they would not have developed that mentality and that physical and mental behavior, which through the years, through generations, has passed on to the younger generation of today. Now, as far as the bad effects of doing that, in general, the lifespan of the Indians who were subject to 20-25 famines, and remember, the British occupied India for 300 odd years. So they were subject to 25, even 30 famines, depending on which part of the country you were in. Over a period of time, that's what developed. And the lifespan of the Indians was very small, relatively small, short. In fact, even just about 100 years ago, anybody living above 50 years of age was considered remarkable. Most of our, even in our good old Puranas and our epics, they talk about people living to a ripe age of 50. So even going back, and that was before the British took over. So you can think about this as when the British took over, the lifespan of an average Indian dropped down even further. So having said that, what caused them to die early? And you'll notice that there are these chronic diseases like high cholesterol, heart attacks. Heart attacks are the largest killer even in India. Not just because of food you eat. I mean, people are eating the same food for years and years and years, but only if you notice, only in the times after the British took over, that people started dying of heart attacks a lot more, and diabetes. Again, people are eating good, nice, rich food even in the olden days, but after the British took over and all this famines, starvation, all that crept in, that's when it happened. Now, my own battle with cholesterol, I think I'm genetically disposed to high cholesterol, so I'm not really concerned about it too much because I know that I have high cholesterol. Everybody in my family has high cholesterol, and it's generations of high cholesterol, probably due to bad eating habits and eating a lot more food when food is
Do you think Indian food is bad for you, or do you think that's a myth?
I think Indian food is good for you. There are aspects of it that can definitely be made better. Cooking with certain kinds of oil. In fact, the kind of oil that's used in India, even for frying and so on, there's safflower oil or gingerly oil and so on and so forth. If you use them in moderation, you're in good shape. The balance is what is important. I'm talking from a vegetarian perspective. You get your proteins through the lentils. You eat a lot of vegetables. You eat easily digestible rice, so it doesn't strain your system, doesn't strain your body, and it keeps the whole system clean, if you will, from top to bottom, because you're eating a lot of greens and
Lots of vegetables.
lots and lots of vegetables. So Indian food per se, there are two aspects of it that you should be careful of. And the first one is sweets. We eat a lot of sweets, but remember that in the olden days, even actually when I was growing up, we didn't get sweets on a regular basis. We got a sweet, or we made sweets at home only for a festival. And there were like only 3 festivals. You'd make sweets for Diwali, you'd make sweets for Sankranti or Pongal, and perhaps you'd make sweets for Navratri. There were only 3 occasions where you made sweets, and you ate a lot of sweets at that time. You didn't make sweets daily. That is a more recent habit where the people have adopted sweets for every occasion. It's a birthday, sweets if it's this, sweets if that, sweets, and that is very detrimental. The second thing that you should be careful of is the oil. If you use the right kind of oil and if you use it in moderation, don't have to deep fry everything. Even that aspect of deep frying, there are only certain foods that are really deep fried. We really don't deep fry our vegetables too much. We like to put them in sambar and rasam and kutu and so on and so forth. That's not much deep frying. There are some vegetables that are deep fried, but you can make them without deep frying as well. And you do need certain number of oil in your body. It needs the grease that kind of keeps things running smoothly. So you can't
Like a
yeah, like a well oiled car. So you can't eliminate oil totally. Some amount of oil is required, and you need it because it has certain kinds of fats that are valuable to the body. But the point again is that British a lack of food, them withholding food to the Indians during the famines, caused the Indians to change their behavior, eat more of everything when it is available. Then the current trend of adopting, there's a Mother's Day, Father's Day, Brother's Day, Sister's Day, Neighbor's Day, everything day, and everything requires sweets and potentially some kind of celebration, which I think is it takes away from the value of that particular day. But that also happens. So they coming back, reiterating one more time: British withholding food, famine, eat anything and eat as much as you can because you don't know what's going to come the next day. Over a period of time, over multiple generations, over 10 generations, has caused both the mental and physiological changes that seem to necessitate even the younger Indians to go ahead and eat as much as they can. As you know, if there's free food, every Indian runs towards it. It doesn't matter if it's good for your health, bad for your health. 90% of the time, if there's any place offering free food, believe me, the Indians would go
all
there.
you can eat.
Pardon? All you can eat. Will just toss things on their plate, even if they can't eat as much. They'll just go put everything in. The example of free food is very evident. Donuts are bad for your health, but the office supplies free donuts. Hey, it's free. I'm going to take it. It's not because they want it, not because they've got such a great sweet tooth, but it's because of what they've been conditioned with as they move through from generation to generation to generation to generation. Hey, if I don't eat it now, I'll not get anything later. What if I don't get anything later? And high cholesterol and diabetes is the result, and that caused the death of most of these people, and it's continuing even today.
Could you say
that's a poor philosophy? Like a philosophy when you're poor to like eat as much as you can now because you might not get it later.
Absolutely true. I mean, think about it. Even today, anywhere between 50 to 65% of India goes to bed hungry at night. So a person in India might get to eat once in 3 days, once in 4 days. So at any given point in time today, if you go look at it tonight, there'll be anywhere from 50 to 65% of the population goes to bed without having eaten a meal for that entire day.
that's crazy? That's crazy to me.
So poverty still exists in India, no matter how much the tech companies have come in and raised the middle class and so on and so forth. The ripple effect is there. I mean, even though as an aggregate, if you look at it, out of the 1.2 billion people in India, the tech workers constitute maybe 10, maybe 15 million only, but they have managed to build the middle class by buying all these other things which cost the economy to produce, more white goods and more goods that these guys consume. So it expanded the middle class to about 250 million people, to 350 million people. So that's all good. In spite of all that, India is still a poor country. India still
And-
has the vast majority of people who go hungry every
And
night.
just to reiterate, we're not like bashing India. We're just saying what we think about it.
And more importantly, we're not bashing India, but facts are facts.
Okay. Moving.
So
So
we're gonna
we're gonna
rank these 4 foods from, we're gonna start off at 4 and then go 3, 2, 1, with 1 being our top food.
Okay, I'll go first. To me, I used to love dosa, but I'm shunning oil these days, and so dosa would be my number 4.
So for me, the vada.
would be number 4. It's just it's really oily, and I want it to be sweet because it's like a donut, but it isn't. So I don't like it as much.
So for me, number 3 would be the vada. For it's a little bit more oily. It's fried in oil. It tastes darn good. It's got all the nice spices in it, and you can eat it with chutney. Without chutney, it still works just as well. But it's as I said, I'm kind of shunning oil these days, so it's vada is number 3 for me.
Number 3 for me is puliogara. I just don't remember eating it. Like my dad says that I loved it when I ate it when I was a kid, but I just don't remember. It's not memorable to me. So I'm getting rid of it.
And number 2 for me would be puliogara. I love puliogara. It's really tasty. It's wonderful. It's got all kinds of spices. It's got peanuts that I love, and it's got spices, and it's tamarind, and it's essentially tamarind rice. So the puli means tamarind, and puliogara is tamarind rice. It's really tasty, but it's going to be number 2 for me, because for me, idli is number 1, no matter what. It's the cleanest, healthiest food that you can ever have, as long as you don't eat it with chili powder and oil. You just eat it with sambar or even chutney, and you eat it. You can eat it plain without anything at all. In fact, you can eat it with sugar. You can eat it with ghee. You can eat it with a bunch of things. But even plain idlis are tasty to me. And so idli is number 1, and puliogara is number 2.
Okay, so for me, number 2 is dosa. Dosa is so good, crispy, tasty. I love it with chili powder. It's amazing. It's still number 2 because idli takes the one spot. Idli with chutney, where you just like dip it and you eat, and it's like moist and flavorful and tasty. The way it absorbs whatever you're dipping it into. Idli is number 1 for me. Just off the board, idli is the best thing on this.
So just to kind of clarify the way it's laid out, at least the 3 white circular balls to the left, those size the cylindrical things next to it, and the donut shaped things are vadas, and the last one, the rice dish, is puliogare.
Okay, we done?
Now go ahead and